Good morning again. I want to just open up with this passage of scripture in the book of Proverbs in chapter 17 and verse 24. And what I want to talk about this morning is how to make the most of the new year, how to make the most of the new year. And as we go to face this new year, there's a lot of things that if we can just make some alterations in our life, it can be a better year than it has been last year, or maybe for the last couple of years, all depending on how things turns out for you in the last couple of years. But there's certain things in our lives that we feel that if we don't make any adjustment or alterations in certain things, that the next year is just going to automatically, magically just change. And I just want to help you this morning from this passage of scripture in the book of Proverbs. The word of God says, an intelligent person aims at wise actions. It says, but a fool starts off in many directions. And what I want to ask you first of all this morning, what are you going to do with this year? Because last year was so bad, and we can look at certain things, all the lockdown and different things, and we can have the attitude, it's going to be just the same as last year, this, that, the other, and all depends on how our attitude is, because attitude always determines the outcome, and it's how we view things, how we see things. And that's why I ask you again, what are you going to do with this year that you have? We can waste it by sitting around and worrying about the things that we failed to accomplish last year, or there's mistakes that we made throughout the year. And many of us have made mistakes. We've failed in certain areas, and we can sit around moping and have a pity party because things didn't go the way that we expected them to go. Or we can decide to make the most of this year that God has granted us. He's granted us another year. We thank God for that we have a future in Him, that we can go forward. There's always other opportunities that we can venture into and enter into. And we could say that this could be one of the greatest years of our life, really. And if we make the conscious decision to do whatever it takes, if we're willing to do whatever it takes for it to change, and there's nothing that we can do to change last year, but we can learn from last year. Today we have the opportunity to start over and make some changes to make this year a very successful year. We have an opportunity to start over and make some changes. You will always have to make changes. If you want things to change, they don't automatically change. You have to make a conscious decision that you're going to make some changes. You're going to make some alterations. And we all have to do this. It says here in verse 24, a fool starts off in many directions. Now, this is a description of many people. Now, these things I'm going to say this morning is to help us all as we face this new year, as we go into it, that it's going to be a successful year, that it's going to be a prosperous year. It's going to be a year where we're going to move forward in the things of our life and be and become all that we have, all of our aspirations or our goals that we may have for many, many years, that maybe this is the year that we enter into. Last year was a bad year, and we're going to enter into another year, but it all depends on the attitude that we have as we face this year and the direction that we take. Because it says here, the fool starts off in many directions. And I said, this is a description of many people. They start off in haste, going in many different directions at the same time with no plan of action. And these are just little tidbits to help us to get together some kind of plan that you and I, that we can just put out there and we can run with and help us through this year that we face. Notice the words at the beginning of this verse. It says, an intelligent person's aims at wise actions. This means that they have a goal, or they have an object, or they have a target to aim at. See, you have to have a target. You have to have goals. You have to set something in front of you to go for. It can't be done aimlessly, and that's why the Apostle Paul says, this one thing I do, this one thing I go after, this one thing that I've set my mind on, and that's what he goes after. And we see it many times that you and I, we want to do so much a lot of times that we just run it, like we could say, like a bull in a china shop, and we're running all over the place in many directions. But the Bible says an intelligent person aims at wise actions. We can't go after everything. We can't accomplish everything. We can't achieve everything. There's certain things that we have to take as they come, and we have to set something in our sights. We have to set a target there. You have to set something that you can aim at and that you can hear. And that means that you have to make changes in your life many times to put these things into operation, we could say, in our lives. And I want to ask you, have you set any goals for 2021? Have you set any goals? A lot of people have great intentions with the New Year's resolution, and it, there's so much stuff, and they have some aspiration and goals, and they set off, a lot of times with these things, but fail to realize that we can set off on the same foot as we did last year or the year before, whatever it was, the years where we sought to achieve certain things. And sometimes we think that we can do this without making alterations and changes in our life, that we that we fail to evaluate things that we continue to do over the years. And a lot of times we just think, I keep doing what I've always done. But I want to tell you, if you keep doing what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. And that's what happens a lot of times in life. We think that things are going to change and things are going to go better, but refuse to change or make alterations. And sometimes there's a lot of things that we have to come to, some truths that we have to come to in regards to ourselves, that we have to make alterations in if we're going to succeed and fulfill our goals and our aspirations. And we need, as I said, a plan. Today we have the opportunity to start over and make some changes. And one of the most important things we have to do if we're going to succeed, there's many things, this is an important aspect of our life, if we're going to succeed, is that we're going to have to accept responsibility for our own life. Now, you can say, what do you mean by that, accept responsibility for my own life? Well, see, this is something that's hard for many people to do, to accept responsibility. Let me try and explain it this morning, what we're talking about. Accepting responsibility for your own life. See, some people would rather blame someone else for the problems or the difficulties in their life. You could say, the reason this is not happening, I've had last year and the year before and whatever length of time it may be, I've had goals and aspirations, and I wanted to do this, I wanted to accomplish that, I wanted to achieve that. But you know what, the reason for that, and this is where it all stems. See, some people would rather blame other people for our problems and our difficulties in life. We point the finger at other people instead of looking at our own life. We're talking about reevaluating our life. We're talking about drawing a line and making some kind of calculation of our life, not just last year, but the previous years to that. That there's things in our life that if we only would be truthful with ourselves in regards to being responsible for our own life, if we would only acknowledge that and make the adjustment and acknowledge different things and say, you know what, I'm going to change that. It wasn't their fault, it wasn't his fault, it wasn't because of this, it wasn't because of that. And that's what I'm talking about, taking responsibility for your own life. See, some people are looking for someone who will accept responsibility for them. A lot of times when things don't turn out the way that we hoped they have or the way that they should have been, we've got an awful habit of blaming other people. The reason that this has happened to me, or the reason that I didn't reach that goal, the reason that it didn't come to pass, or the reason that I didn't fulfill it, or the reason that it didn't come about is because of X, Y, Z. It can be people, it can be objects, it can be things, it can be places, it can be anything, but we've got an awful habit of making excuses for our actions, the actions that we've made, and what's come about through the result of that, because it didn't work out to our plan or the way that we thought it would work out. We've got an awful habit. Human nature has got an awful, none of us is exempt from this. Human nature has an awful habit of pushing things over to other people, and we blame other people, or we blame other things, or we blame other circumstances. See, accepting responsibility for our life is not a popular concept in our society in which we live in. We can see this all the time. This is the attitude, though. None of our problems is our fault. Now, we have a whole world, we have a whole system, a social system that loves to blame other things. The reason for things not going the way that they should go, or the way that things should be, is because of certain things, or because of certain people, or because of certain organizations. And we've picked up this, we could say, this victim mentality because of this, that we refuse to take responsibility for our own life. And the reason, listen to me this morning, the reason that things are not turning out is because of other people. If other people didn't do the things that they done, or if other people done the things that they should do, this wouldn't turn out this way for me. I wouldn't be the victim. It's their fault, it's not mine. And we have a whole society, that's full and that's filled with this attitude that none of our problems are our fault. Everything that's bad in our life is somebody else's fault. And we can blame, you hear it all the time, people are mouth off about certain things. They blame the environment. They'll blame, this thing, the environment in which we live in, it's because of this, and because of the influence of this, and because of the influence of that, and it's the environment that we live in, and if we lived in a perfect environment, all of these things wouldn't happen to us, and this wouldn't happen, and that wouldn't happen. Well, I want to tell you, Adam and Eve was in a perfect environment. When God made it, everything was perfect. They were in a perfect environment, but yet they chose to go their own way, and they had to suffer the consequence of their actions. And they can blame it, but it wasn't Adam. Adam said it was the woman. We've got, right from day one, it wasn't, it wasn't their fault. It was someone else's fault. But the thing is, when we succumb to things, it's our fault. And we see this all the time. If we lived in a perfect environment, and everything was right, and everything was, the way that it should be, and if other people put things in place, and we sorted out the environment in which we live in, it was a healthy environment, it was this environment, and everybody was this, that, the other, I wouldn't be the person that I am. And what it is not taking responsibility for our own actions or our own life. See, we can blame, this goes on all the time, we can blame the education system. You know what I mean? If they done this in the schools, and if they learned it earlier on, and then if they put this in the curriculum and that in the curriculum, I want to tell you, it won't make any difference. At the end of the day, we still have to accept the responsibility for our own life as an individual. And I wanted to, the reason that I'm saying this carries powerful weight in regards to fulfilling our goals. Because when something goes wrong, if you keep blaming someone else, we're making the wrong calculation when we draw the line. We're adding up something, and we're trying to get an equation. And the equation, when it's all made up, is that we need to make some changes. We need to cut back, or we need to do this, or we need to do the other. But a lot of time we push it onto someone else, and we say, if they would just do this, if they would just do that, it would be a different calculation. But really, it wouldn't be a different calculation, because we have to go to accept the responsibility of our own life and not keep pushing it on the things around us. The education system, people do this all the time. If only the schools, or if only the college, if only the universities, if only they're doing this, they put this into place and that the other into place, and we blame that system. It's someone else's fault why we turned out like we did. We blame parents. The reason, it's my mom and dad, or my dad had been different, if he had been a better father, my mother had been a better mother, if this had been done, if they had this in our home, if they had that, this, that, and that's what we do. A lot of people, for the condition and the way that they behave, their behavior in the world in which we live in, is the parents' fault. It was the parents' fault. They were the parent, we were the kids, or whatever the case may be. And we love to blame. We always love to blame someone else instead of drawing a line and say, this calculation at the end is sum total of whatever is me, and I've got to take responsibility for my own actions, for my own life, and it's not the parents, not the environment, it's not the education system, or else we want to blame the government. You know, everything at the moment is Boris Johnson's fault. You know, I'm not taking any difference in political parties here. I'm not favouring one over the other. You know, it doesn't make really any difference who's in government. You and I, things would still be done, and wherever the case may be. And if they had done this, they had done the other, you know, we wouldn't be in the place that we're in. And whatever it is that's going on, not purely, not so much in what's going on at the moment in the position that we find ourselves down in these lockdowns and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about in general. We always think if the government, if we had the right party in, if we had the right policies here, if we had that, if you done this, if you done that, you know, we live in a lovely country, and if you know people, it'd be this and that and the other, and it'd make a lot of difference to me. I wouldn't be the nasty person that I am. I wouldn't be the bitter person that I am. I wouldn't be the aggressive person that I am. It's all to do with my makers. It's all to do with the environment and what's around me. It's all to do with that. If all of that was in the right place, you know, and what it is an excuse for accepting responsibility for our own life, for our own actions. We blame everybody else, but it's not our fault. It may seem and sound a bit heavy this morning. I don't want it to come across that way. I'm trying to help us all that there's something drastic in our life that we face each year. If we don't make an honest calculation when we're doing this, and when we arrive with the total sum of what's there, and we say the reason that sum is there, the reason that's the equation of whatever is left over, the way things are, is to do with me. It's not to do with it's to do with me, and I'm taking responsibility that it's either a minus or a plus, or it's a good or a bad. I'm taking my own personal responsibility for that, because it's our life that we're not making a calculation on all the world. We're making a calculation on our life and our actions, the way that we behave ourselves, the way that we conduct ourselves, the way that we think that we're going to face something, and if we're successful, but we have the wrong attitude, we have the wrong heart in regards to those things many times. And this is to help us all, because as I said before at the beginning, none of us is exempt from trying to shift the blame, from pointing the finger at other people for our own shortcomings, for the reason why it didn't happen, the reason why we didn't succeed, the reason that it was a failure, the reason that things didn't go the way they should have done, because it's, you know, it's him, it's, you know, it's everybody and anybody except us. Taking responsibility for our own life is a powerful thing. When you say, because you know what, that's when you can do something. You can't do anything about other people, but when you take responsibility for yourself, that's where we can make the adjustment. You can't make the adjustment in the education system, can't make it in the environment. There's loads of things that you have no power within, but you have it within yourself to make the adjustment within yourself. And I want you to tell you, you'll find that different things will change within our life, and it help us to succeed and achieve our goals, and our aspirations will be fulfilled. It always has to be someone else's fault. We'll never be successful in life, and we'll never make our lives count, and we'll never achieve our goals if we have the attitude that it's someone else's fault for the condition of the position and why things haven't turned out right. We must accept our responsibility for our own lives, for our own actions, for our own attitude, and our own mistakes. The reason I failed is because, the reason we failed is because ourselves. See, King James Version says of Galatians in chapter 6 and verse 5 says, "For each one shall bear his own load." Same scripture, Galatians 6:5 in the Living Bible says, each of us must bear some fault and burden of his own, for none of us are perfect. The Message Bible says, each of us must take responsibility for doing the creative best we can with our own life. The New Century Version says, each person must be responsible for himself or herself. That's what the Word of God says. Each of us must be responsible for our own self. We are responsible for ourselves before the world in which we live in, and before God. We're responsible for our own actions. We can blame whoever we want to blame. But when it all boils down, it's you and I. And I want to tell you, this makes a great difference in regards to success or failure. If we're honest with ourselves and hold our hands up and say, you know what, it's me. I'm the reason. It's not because it is, not because it's me. I'm the reason that this failed. I'm the reason that this doesn't succeed. That's what we need to do. If the equation comes out right and we know that it's us, don't shift the blame. It's going to help us a lot if we stop shifting the blame and take responsibility for our own life and our own actions. See, all of us face two kinds of circumstances in life. The firstly, those circumstances which we have no control over. The circumstances in life that you have no control whatsoever over. None of us this morning knows what we will face throughout this coming year. There's things that's out there that you and I have no control whatsoever over. None of us. There are certain things that are going to happen regardless of what you do or how you plan your life. There's some things. Example, some things that we have no control over this moment. We have no control over the weather. You've got no control over the weather. You know, we can wish all we want and hope all we want, but we can't control them. We can't turn back the cloud. We can't stop the rain. We can't stop the snow. We can't stop the wind. We can do nothing about it. Something beyond our control. So there's some circumstances that is not our making. Secondly, there are some circumstances that we face as a result of our own choice, our actions, or lack of action. It's true. People who have, say to see, example this morning, people who have financial problems. Now that financial problem could have come through whatever. It could have been a financial control, it could have been a financial problem, circumstances outside our control. You could have lost your job, your position, through no fault of your own. They were just making redundancies and you happen to be one of the people that they picked. And you find yourself in a difficult circumstances. It's something that's out of your control. You know, there's nothing you can do about it. I'm talking about the natural circumstances. There's nothing you can do about it. You can plead all you want with the boss and all the rest of it. So there's that kind. But then there's people who have finished financial problems because they quit a job and don't have another job to go to. Now, I'm not saying it's no particular person I'm talking about. I'm not using an illustration in my mind of someone that I know of, and this has come to mind because of them. It's just out there type of thing. There's people that we probably know of, or we know that it happens that people give up the job and they find themselves in financial difficulty because they quit a job and they didn't have another job to go to. This is just normal things that we're talking about, things that we can relate to. The reason they quit their job is because they didn't like it, or maybe someone made them mad, or whatever the reason, a combination of reasons why they chose to give up their job, and it was a choice that they made within themselves, and because of the choice, and we're responsible for our own actions and our own choices. This is what I'm talking about. Being responsible for your own actions and your own choices that you make, and it's not someone else. You know, we find ourselves in circumstances and difficulties because of our own actions. As when things get tight and money and food are low and scarce, people blame their families, or they blame the church, or they blame people in the church, or it's just someone they refuse to accept responsibility for their decisions or their actions, and they want to blame other people. This happens all the time. A lot of times, the reason why a lot of things in church and people are the way they are is because of the pastor. It's the pastor's fault. I've lived long enough and pastored long enough. You know, when things go wrong a lot of times, the reason this is happening is because of the pastor. It's his fault, or it's his wife's fault, or it's the leader's fault in the church. It's their fault. If they were doing the job, if they were doing this and that and the other, if they were helping us and they were doing whatever, and I want to tell you the times that we've been blamed and I've been placed for certain things, It's got nothing to do with me whatsoever. People make the choice, they make the decision. That's why when people come to me and say, what do you think, Pastor, do you think I should do this? Like, I think I should do that. I say, that's fine. If you want to, you're responsible for your own acts. You're responsible for your own choices. If you feel that's the right way, if you feel God is leading you that way or whatever, and I'll pray for you and I'll pray into for you, for you to make the right decision. But at the end of the day, you make the right decision, whatever. This happens all the time in churches. People make choices, they make decisions. And the decision that they make, and can be wrong many times. And you try to guide them and direct them in the right way. But at the end of the day, they've already made the decision before they came and asked you. A lot of times, it's already made. And but when it goes wrong and everything, you didn't give them the right thing. You should have told them, don't go down that road, don't do this, don't marry her, don't go out, don't do whatever. It's going to go, and when it does go bad, it's your fault. You should have told me. You should have told me it's not going to work out. And this happens many times. I'm talking about real things now. These are not just little stories that I'm talking about. I'm talking about some things that don't go wrong. See, this happens many times when we may not be in control of all of the circumstances that we face this coming year. We do have control on how we act and how we will respond to them. See, we make our own decisions. It's not right. People love to get the pastor or his wife to make the decisions, because if you make decisions, if it goes wrong, at least you can blame you honestly, type of thing. But you learn from experience. You don't make decisions for other people. You can give them advice, different things, but you never say, yes, you should do this, and no, you shouldn't do this. So you leave people the decision because they're personally responsible for their own actions and for their own life. They can make a wrong decision. It's up to them to make a wrong decision if they want. We can learn, and we can achieve and we accomplish other things by some of the mistakes that we make. But the thing is when we acknowledge it and not try to push the blame onto other people and say, the reason that I made that mistake, we need to hold our hands up and say, the reason that's gone like that is because I made a wrong mistake. See, I want to tell you, failure, failure can be the seed of success. We understand that. But what we're talking about is if you shift the blame and you blame other people and you don't take responsibility for your own life, you're left with it. You're left with it. See, we need to understand that there are three kinds of people in life. There are the accusers, the excusers, and the choosers. See, the accusers, they always blame everybody else for their problems. And the favorite phrase is, it was your fault. And many times you've heard that. That was your fault. It was your fault. You should have told me. You knew better. You should have told me it was your fault. And then there's the excusers. These excusers are people that always have an excuse for not making a decision or doing something. Or when they have, they want to make an excuse about why they done it or why they haven't done it. See, this is the truth. There's always a reason why they can't make the most or get the most out of the life or out of the year. See, and then pushing on this morning, there's the choosers. They say, I choose to accept responsibility for my own life. I want to tell you, it's not so much a secret. It's an essential thing that we need to do in our life. Is take responsibility for our own life. As adults, we need to take responsibility. Listen, I tell you, I don't know whether you've experienced a lot, but I certainly have in my life. People that refuse to take responsibility for their own life. Now we can go back to this. We can read into certain things in history, and the reason why, I've read of cases and different things, examples of the reason in psychiatry and everything, they bring it out. The reason, it's not their fault. They've heard of all this, they've gone over the past and delved into things in people's minds. And the reason that Jimmy is like that is because he's like that because he used to go to this place and he picked up these habits from these people. And that's because of society, or that's because of the environment. Listen, listen, it plagues out in our society in which we live in, and it gives people the excuse to make for their own actions and not take responsibility for their own actions and their own choices and their own life. There's a lot of people in this world in which we live in, and I want to tell you, if you're going to succeed in life, if you're going to fulfill your goals and your aspirations in the new year, you're going to have to take responsibility, I can't say enough, for your own life and for your own actions, and say, you know what, if something that's gone wrong, you say, it was me, I made a mistake, this happened, you know, I was advised not to do this, or I was advised to do this, and I didn't take the advice of other people that have a little bit more understanding of life, that's lived longer, and they've learned by their own mistakes, and they're trying to help me, but I wouldn't listen because I thought I had it all together. And you know, but you know, I'm big enough. It takes a big person, it takes a big man, and it takes a big woman to put their hands up and say, you know what, it was my fault. It was my fault. I want to tell you, we'd achieve a lot more, and we will succeed a lot more in life if we would accept and acknowledge and take responsibility for our own life and for our own actions. Some people don't think that this plays out in our life, especially at the beginning of the year. Things that if we sort out in our life and say, you know, well, if you take this in without if you take what I'm saying this morning, take it into the new year, and you make adjustments and alterations, say, you know what, that was wrong, I need to do this, that, you make some alterations, adjustments in your life, I want to tell you, you will succeed. You will succeed, and guarantee you this. But refusal to take responsibility for your actions and for your life, you'll just play into the same old thing. You'll make the same mistakes, you'll make the same excuses, it'll be the same old thing. And I want to tell you, you'll have exactly at the end of this year that we just entered into, it'll be exactly the same. You'll be still blaming someone else, you'll still accusing someone else, it'll be someone else's fault why it didn't work out. Take responsibility for your own life. We all have to do this. I have to do this. It doesn't make any difference how old you are, how young you are. It's got nothing to do with your age. It's got to do with maturity, and say, you know what, it's my fault. It was me that blew it. It was me that didn't do it right. It was me that didn't do it. It was me that should have done it. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort it out, and I'm going to take responsibility for it. And I want to tell you this. This will change. This is something that you have to alter. We all have to do this. That you alter in your life, and it helps us to achieve and be successful and reach our goals, fulfill our aspirations as we reach out into this new year. See, they choose to accept responsibility for their own goals, happiness. I say, we're not dependent. We're not dependent on what someone else done or what someone else will do for us, because we're taking responsibility in ourselves. We're closing this morning. What kind of person will you be this coming year? Will you be a accuser, an excuser, or a chooser? Will you make that choice? Will you choose to make the most of 2021, and you will accept responsibility for your own actions and your own life? And when you clarify what you want this year, what's important to you? She said, Forda, it's a fool that rushes in after everything. What you need to do, you have to have something to aim at. There has to be something there, like a board. You're aiming at something. If you haven't got something to aim at, it's very, very hard to hit the mark. It's very hard to fulfill your goals, fulfill something you feel within yourself. If you don't set it in front of you and go after it and realize that, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility, whether it succeeds or fails. The reason that it didn't happen before, it was because of me. But if you go after something and still you feel within your heart, you've persuaded yourself to believe that it was someone else's fault, there was someone else, that was them, their fault, it was you, it was your fault, and we won't put our hands up and say, you know what, it was me. And we seek to go in to fulfill our goals and our aspirations. I want to tell you, they're going to be flawed. They're going to be the same as they was last year, because we have to make alterations if we're going to succeed. God bless you this morning, and have a happy new year. God bless you.